Thank you, Chairman. For the last 2 days, I've been wearing pretty much my ICAR hat. But for the next 15 minutes, I'll be wearing a user's hat from an Irish perspective, how we in Ireland used ICAR and the template that is ICAR to implement a national ID database, performance recording and genetic evaluation system. So I will take you through that. I've worked there, as you see, from 2001 to 2012 as a breeding information systems manager. And a little bit about the country. I'm a little humbled, really. We are a small country. It is only 300 miles long and 220 miles wide. So I recognize it may be like one of your regions, but the principles are still the same. From the dairy perspective, we have 1.2 million dairy cows. 95% are black and white, Holstein Friesian, with some small levels of crossbreeding. We have lots of green grass, so we have what's called a seasonal calving. We try and get the cows to calve when the grass starts growing for cheaper feedstuffs. We actually have an A plus B minus C, which means that we actually pay on the protein content of the milk. The reason why we do that is because most of the milk is not consumed by humans. It's actually made into cheese. So the first thing a processor has to do is evaporate all the milk, and there's huge cost in that. So it's more important that we have high constituents. Fertility is essential. A big change for us this spring is that the quotas for milk production lifted in April, and the government have charged us with now trying to increase our milk production by 50%. So it's an exciting time. We also have approximately 1 million beef cows. These are much smaller herds, in around under 10 is the average. A lot of these would not be full-time farmers. They would be working off-farm as well. And the percentage of where the animals go, 22% of the suckler cows will go back into the breeding. 16% go to live export. But 62% get slaughtered in Ireland for export, mainly to the EU, but also to the States and to Russia, etc. The margins are less in the beef than they are in the dairy. Okay, so I'm going to take you back on a little journey. In 1997, and some very influential breeding farmers approached the government and said they were dissatisfied the way the breeding was happening in Ireland. And the government commissioned Ernst & Young to put a paper together, a review of the situation. And in 1998, an umbrella group called the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation was formed. Now, and this is an important point, before you start, you need to get agreement. And there was a couple of years where we had spent a lot of time meeting and arguing and trashing out the terms of reference of what and who owned ICBF. But the biggest shareholders paid money in, and they own the company. And they're made up of the AI companies in Ireland, the milk recording companies, the herd books, which would be like the stud books, but more importantly, also farmer organizations. And DAF, we always have one representative from the government on the board. So the board are made up of the representatives from these organizations, and the board will really dictate policy. Looking at it another way, there's 16 members on the board, 3 from AI, 3 from milk recording, we have 3 from the herd books, and we have 6 from the farm organization. So it's a very strong farm-led organization. And the department have 1 because it's very important to keep the department informed that the policy is right. And also, let's face it, if there's any EU money, we can actually put some submissions to Europe for grants, etc. But the point is, and that's where we are down in Cork at the ICBF central databases down there. But the stakeholders in cattle breeding make the decision rather than anybody else. At the start, we had to make some agreements, and these are very, very important at the start. So contributors retain ownership. So the people who have been in the business for years really should get the benefit out of it, service providers and farmers. We had to get a farm animal events system up and running to feed the national ID and the database into the database. We said we'd share electronic data that was collected for research particularly, so that we can actually improve. We integrated genetic evaluations, but the herd owner controls the access to the data. So basically, when we have a database, he decides pretty much who can see his data. So he can actually authorize a veterinary, he can authorize the research, he can authorize the processor or the mart or the dealers, whichever. But the information also gets used by the service providers so they can actually give him a service. We released in 2006 a Herd Plus service for farmers, and I'll show you a little bit about that later on. But basically, I said earlier on in my discussions, if you collect data, it's very, very important that you give something back to the farmer, or else he will stop doing it. So you need to give him services. And we charge him for it. And he pays the service providers, and the service providers pay us as a background umbrella group. So it should be a full cost recovery. So as I said, to recap, we started in 98, and the first thing we did was join ICAR. And the reason we did that, really, was to say, well, okay, before we start building something, we really want to know where the road is going to end up or where we want to go. Back to Dr. Amoy's comment this morning, we walk before we can run, but before you start out on the journey, you really need to have that appreciation of what the road is going to take you. So before you head out on the journey, we consulted ICAR's guidelines to help us define the map. And really, this is the map, the 4 building blocks of ICAR. It was really the template we used. Firstly, to establish an ID. Secondly, to establish a consolidated performance recording for milk and beef. To control the labs to make sure that the quality from the testing was right. And ultimately, in the dark blue, you see the genetic evaluations. That's the cream on the top of milk. We can start now making genetic improvements to our dairy herd and giving more profit back to the farmer. But underpinning the whole thing is the central database. It will not work unless we have data coming in and out and feeding it. So that's crucial. Just first of all, we have defined traceability. When we talk about the ID, the Irish government in 1998 introduced an ear tag. So every animal using the ISO code had it started with IE for Ireland. The first 6 or 7 digits were the farmer, and then a sequential number for the animal. So every animal in Ireland gets tagged with the ear. It's easier than I appreciate in some countries because they're pretty much zoned within the land. And it's also, I suppose, keeper-owner traceable. So when we look at the European community in the number 178, which is the regulation, any food or feed or food-producing animal needs to be traced through all stages of production, processing, and distribution. And a simple tag, I don't know who made this, but the point is we can see a big number here that the farmer can see, and basically it's a tag and there's 2 of them on it. We subsequently moved to electronic tags, but at the start we started with the basic plastic tag. And what's key is that the tag is there. We know where the ear tag, but where it exists at any one point in time. The owner and keeper need to be established, and that's crucial for disease control, as we talked about. So the keeper and the owner, and where it is in time, what we call the period. So if I bought it off Ken today, then the date starts in my herd of the 15th of April. And again, to repeat myself, it's crucial that the final test of the effectiveness of traceability depends on the performance of the database. A database should ensure a real-time bovine tracking system, and this effectiveness will depend on how often, how quick the database is fed. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean always online, Wi-Fi, because in Ireland at the start, we didn't have that GPRS effectivity. So we used paper, and we used an animal event system. What do we need to do first? We needed, obviously, AI organisation information, milk and beef, we needed other data, but on-farm animal events was the first thing we started. So we said, phase 1, we got an animal events book and we gave it to every farmer. He could record every calving and send it in to us. We gave him free post envelopes, and he wrote in the calf ID with the new tag, the dam of the ID, date of birth, and the sire. Now we can start making connections. Later on, we went on to calving performance. Was it easy calving, hard calving? 1, 2, 3, 4. Milk weights and volume started flowing in from the labs. Then we started actually providing a weighing service for farmers. And that came into the database. So now one ID had many value points attached to it. So this is, prior to the database, the farmer had to talk to the herd books, and register the calf. He had to go to the pedigrees or the AI company and tell him that the cow needs serving. He had to go to milk recording and start the lactation. Now, one-stop shop, we can do it all. Data recording, I won't go into it, but the lifeblood, we need to make it easier for farmers to actually get. You don't want him doing too much work. His job is to do farming, not collecting data. So we want to make it as easy as possible. So technology we have to start using. And we right now use milk recording technology, we use handhelds, we use linear scoring, where on these items here, technician goes out and the herd is loaded to the handheld, he updates it, and it syncs back to the database. So the farmer isn't keying it, it happens automatically. This is something we did from ICAR. When I joined ICAR, I visited Denmark in 2004. I saw a system there, which was electronic ID for cattle, but also electronic recording. It was a new option where the farmer didn't have to buy it, and we moved it around. But we increased milk recording from 381,000 cows to 596 in the 10 years because of new technologies. Likewise, in AI handheld, before we used to have a written docket when the service technician came out, and now we have a handheld which takes care of all of it. I'm running out of time here, but I've only about another 20 slides to go. That was a joke, Chairman. I won't be. So again, we've increased the number of the AI servers hitting the database. Again, the farmer doesn't have to worry. It's happening behind the scenes, but the picture is building up all the time. We need to give it back to the farmer. So we give every farmer a log-on and a username, and he can go on to the website. On our website, icbf.com, every farmer has their own unique herd number and his own password. He can see all his data. So we put all that together and give him his reports, and these are some of the reports we can give for him. So it's very powerful. This is one page of a cow's history. So we give him this once a year. He can go on, and you can see quite clearly, this is her genetic merit, this is her ancestry, and these are her calves. And we can actually see what he got in the factory because they're connected, and what the grade was, and the carcass weight. So it's very powerful. It's a matter of writing the program and it comes out. It's really valuable for the farmer. Again, this is just comparing his young stock. We benchmark among other farmers without giving names, so it's usually important that way. Inbreeding checker, we know the background of his individual cows, so if he picks a bull, straight away we can see, this Limousin bull is too closely related to her. He can't use her, straight away. Just the final two slides, we have what it's done for the farming profit. The dairy one here, you can see we have really jumped up, and genomics is a big part of that, but the fundamentals of ID and performance recording enable this to happen, and the same with the beef. Genomics, I won't go into it, but that's the gravy. It's another level again, but we've made fantastic strides in the country regarding giving great genetics back to Irish farmers. So when we started the database, this is what we had in mind, and this is why we started to help consolidate the AI milk recording herd books and the pedigree or the registration of animals. This was 2002. 10 years on, the value of what the database can do for the country or a region, we actually did not foresee. For right now, we have the veterinary labs are feeding in. Before a vet goes out to a farmer, he can see the mastitis levels, he can see the fertility levels, he can see whatever ketosis we may have or whatever. The bulk tanks are going back and forth. The slaughter factories, we can see the carcass weights he's getting, he can see them. For sales, we can do sales catalogue out of the database. These are the government advisors. So if he's having discussion groups, where we have in Ireland, we group them together in groups of 10 or 15 where the farmers share and the advisor would talk about their data. This is our beef and dairy progeny test program, and this is just farm relief and the vets again. So all in all, to summarise, and this is the last slide, animal breeding is a unique and powerful tool for improving the profitability of cattle farming. And our animal breeding has been transformed to a unique partnership between the farmers, the breeding industry and the department. And I would stress that. That's the first thing we need to do, is get the right people around the table. The national ID and traceability system adopted by Ireland has greatly facilitated Irish breeding. We couldn't have done it without that. That was the starting point. Continue with investment in cattle breeding. Once you start and the farmers see it, then the politicians will continue to invest because the farmers are happy and their voters are happy. The model established relies heavily on international cooperation and collaboration, and membership and full participation in the activities of ICAR and interoperable are fundamental to the achievements. So that, from an Irish perspective, is how we got to where we are today. I appreciate it might be a little different here, but I would also challenge to say, well, 80% is probably, a cow is a cow, a beef animal is a beef animal, might be a little different, hardier here, but the environment may be different, but the principles should be the same. So thank you for your time.